Hello everyone, it's me Nick, and I'm going to talk to you about using assessment data to inform instruction. So I'm choosing this group of students. These are high school students who are arranged by different scores they received throughout the, I'm guessing, semester or 9 weeks. And during this class, I'm going to assume that I'm teaching social studies because I will be probably teaching social studies, or my certification will be an ELL, but there's not, as far as I know, not a lot of classes devoted to that, and I would like to get a second certification in social studies, so I will be teaching something like that, I think, in the future. So we're going to assume this is a social studies class of different levels. So we've got their different scores, and I don't know how these different scores are weighted, if the test and the quiz have different percentages. So I weighted them as if they were all the same. I didn't know, so I just assumed each thing was worth an equal weight, and so I averaged each one of these scores and organized the students from high to low. So student 2568 is our highest with 100% across the board, and student 2589 is our lowest with an average of 6.13. So first, how can I differentiate if this is the start of the year by possibly gifted or special needs? I said that over the 90th percentile on average is usually or possibly gifted. I can't be sure, but I'm going to guess that these four ladies or gentlemen may in fact be gifted students and may need additional challenges during the class. The bottom 5 students doesn't always mean that they're special needs, but they are usually recommended for RTIs or IEPs or something of that nature, not always. But these are the ones I want to watch for and make sure that these ones can get all the support that they need. So that's how I've differentiated from high to low. And let's talk about how I group them. So my first grouping is homogeneous groups of 2. Homogeneous groups of 2, so we got our highest people together and our lowest people together. And there's a little bit of information I wrote right here. This is good for similar math problems or analyzing text together. The higher groups can be given more difficult questions, and the lower ones can be given ones to match their needs. Some of the options I say here, like this is good for math problems or analyzing texts. I mean, you can do that for a lot of the groupings. A lot of these will overlap. So I chose an activity for each group that I think matches that group well, but there will be some overlap. So for homogeneous groups of 2, I chose this activity, which is the paired reading, and they should read the information and disseminate it together. But the difference here you'll notice is this is going to be for a higher level group, and this will be for a lower level group. So you notice that the wording and the details are a little bit different. British had 250 casualties and 73 fatalities, whereas this says it doesn't even have that, just colonists made the British retreat. So this is a much more detailed um, account of the events. This just gives the general idea for kids that don't need to disseminate a lot of text. In this same way, if I'm dealing with historical documents, when I have the high groups and the low groups, the high groups are going to tend to get a lot more primary documents, things that were actually written by the people at the time, where the low groups are going to get more secondary documents, current people writing about what the people that back then did, because primary documents are a lot harder to understand. So that is my grouping of homogeneous pairs. And then I made homogeneous groups of, it says here 4, it's 4 to 5. In this specific case, my 4 gifted students happen to be paired together or grouped together. And my 5 students who may be at need are together as well. Now, when would you use this? Well, this is effective for group projects where higher level groups can take on more difficult work, and this is good for, it's often good to have the highs with the lows, but it's not always good. Sometimes the high kids don't want to be slowed down by the low kids, and sometimes the low kids don't want to feel like they're being taught or preached to by the high kids. Sometimes it can be really uncomfortable, and I've been in situations with people much smarter than me before. It can be uncomfortable. So in this case, they're paired with kids more closer to their general range. So like these guys are generally scoring in the middles, right? And there are different activities for that. And also these activities, all of them I will post on my submission page afterwards so you can see these links. So the top link is information about grouping, where I got the information about grouping. And the bottom page is the activity I chose. And for this activity, I chose a Bill of Rights lesson. Now this Bill of Rights lesson I would alter for this specific grouping. This Bill of Rights lessons says to divide the class into 2 groups, split them in half, and then give each group of them the Bill of Rights. What I'm actually going to do is split them into 4s and 5s, and instead of giving them the whole Bill of Rights, I'm going to separate them into different groups for each bill that I want to talk about. Now, the way you can differentiate this is that the lower level students are going to get an amendment or a bill which is summarized. It's telling basically what this bill does and why it's important. And then that group of students can talk about that. And depending on how I would do it, I would probably have them team teach the class. So they can take that bill and team teach the class with that bill. And then the higher level students would get the primary document. They get the actual bill, exactly what the bill says, especially the gifted students, and they can explain what that bill means in their own words. So they can make it easier for the rest of the class to understand. Depending on the amount of bills and amendments I want to use, the top group, the gifted group, could get extra. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups here. So yeah, these guys might actually get 2 or maybe some amendments as well. It depends because I don't actually know these people. But that is my idea for homogeneous groups of 4 to 5. Next, I organized the groups. I went back to the original, not the original page, but my one that was separated from high to low, and I took the lows and I put them in so that there's the highest in the class, then the lowest, then the second highest, and the second lowest. So now the highs and lows can be grouped together, and as you go down the list, it aims more towards the middle over here. So what does that look like? Well, here we have heterogeneous groups of 2. So exactly as I said before, the bottom group happened to be 3 because I have 23 students, so it doesn't work out in groups of 2 without one group being bigger. And what kind of project would I use for that? Oh, I was not quite in the right place. It's down here. Peer tutoring and peer pairing and tutoring. Now this is a case where the high students would be teaching the low students. And again, this can be uncomfortable. I don't think I would too often use heterogeneous pairs. But if I felt that there was something that was really specific, or I knew that these people, that these kids got along, they could be used to teach each other. And it could be that the lower level student has a skill that the higher level student doesn't have, and they could teach something new to the lower level student. Heterogeneous groups of 3 to 4 is where I think this can work really well though. In heterogeneous groups of 3 to 4, I've got the highest and the second highest with the lowest and the lowest, and they're paired up, and some of these groups, most of them are 4, the bottom one is 3. And what are they going to do in these kind of groups? Well, they can do a variety of things, many of the things that were mentioned before, but this is where I think project-based learning will really turn out good. Now, I want to point out here, this kind of grouping can also be really good for ELLs who need to hear the target language from their peers. So, like, let's assume that maybe this lower child does not speak English as his native language. So hearing it from these higher level peers would really help him out. And he can, because they don't always want to hear from teachers, and the relationship with teachers is a different level. But they can be with their peers and hear the target language, and it can help them learn. What am I going to do with these kids? Well, project-based learning. Project-based learning is awesome. And the project that I had planned for the previous portion of this module was with a camera, they're going to make, maybe not this kind of camera, but they'll make a YouTube video. And then they'll upload their YouTube video, and the YouTube video is going to be about a portion of history that we studied in US history class. Now, I think this will work really well with these guys, something like this, because these guys that are low, it does not mean they're dumb. It just means that they don't have the background knowledge and about US history, or they don't care about US history. They're not motivated to learn about US history. You give them a project and they can make the project the way they want, and they might have more motivation to learn, and they can do what they excel at. I mean, maybe this kid and this kid are really good at studying, and they'll be really good at writing the script for the YouTube video, but these two kids just love to act, and they can really get into it, and they can act about the founding fathers, and one of them can be Benjamin Franklin, and he can act like Benjamin Franklin, and through that, he can learn and remember what Benjamin Franklin was like. So I think this heterogeneous group with 2 highs and 2 lows is really good for project-based learning. And as I said, they overlap. I also think that's going to be really good for homogeneous groups too, so that the homogeneous groups can make projects that match their skills and needs as well. Okay, another grouping that I've created is a high, mid, low group. It's useful for reading and analyzing together. And you've got the highest student, the lowest student, and someone in the middle. The problem with these heterogeneous groups, I know, is that I keep getting the high kid with the low kid. They keep overlapping. So you'd want to mix it up sometimes. But as I don't really know these kids, I'm not doing that right now. So what would I have them do? I would have them do group reading as a class. And this is actually a reading team log where they can fill in the log and what they're going to do. And this is for younger kids with the drawing and was it good? So they have a checklist. Did we get as far as we planned? Did we read up to a certain page? I would use this similar sort of thing with US history text or maybe primary sources where they would read it together and try to understand it. And they could do that in groups. And then I really love the idea of you guys read in groups and then you team teach the rest of the class. I think that can cover a lot of time. Let's say that the groups need to know about how each one of the 13 colonies was different from another. They can all, in their groups, read about a colony, and then they can work together to team teach about that colony to the rest of the class. So if you happen to have a group that excelled really well at this, you could give them additional colonies, but because they're high, middle, and low groups, you probably wouldn't have to. Finally, I grouped the class by interest, and I know there are many ways to group classes by interest. So this is the method of interest grouping that I did. And at first, I want to explain this project itself. This project is about participation in government. So each student's going to pick their interest group, and then they're going to answer these questions on a piece of paper and give it to me before their presentation. Then they're going to give a 15 to 20 minute presentation about an interest group. I might make it slightly shorter, but then they would give a presentation about their interest group and what that interest group does. So let me go back to the Excel. The first thing that would be done is the students would be pre-taught about the 7 groups that have a strong stance in American government. Then they'll be assigned to fill out an online poll to choose which group they want to choose. So they can choose from the American Civil Liberties Union, the Christian Coalition, the NRA, Greenpeace, Handgun Control Inc., Children's Defense Fund, or the NAACP. After choosing one of the groups that they want on the poll, they are assigned to that group. However, once one group has 4 students, that group is full. So if you choose a group and it's already got 4 students, you have to choose a different group. In the chance, because I have 23 students, there is a small amount of chance that there would be a bunch of groups of 3 and 4 and one student left by himself. And if that one student was left by himself, he could choose whichever group he wanted to go to, and then that group could have 5 students. I randomly selected the groups, and in my random selection, that did not happen. In fact, we had one group of 2, which was Greenpeace, and then most of the other groups, or not all the other groups are 3 to 4 students. So students have chosen the groups that match their highlighted color, and these are in no particular order, just it matches the color from top to bottom. And I just organized them in this order. Then these students would prepare and deliver a speech, and this is based on interest. So essentially their scores shouldn't be too affected by this because they're doing what they want to do. They're choosing the group they want to do. Now, of course, some students don't want to do any of the groups. Yeah, that's going to happen. But the idea is, in this case, that they can choose something they're more interested in than something else, and they can have a better presentation. They can do a really good job. However, if you are curious about how they would, like if you're the teacher and you want to guess how they might achieve, I have organized these groups by taking their average scores again, adding them all together, and then dividing it by the number of students. So there's 4 students in this group, and that gives them an average percent of 36. Whereas this group only has 2, it's divided by these 2 students, and their average percentage is 68. In that way, I can guess that the National Rifle Association group and the Children's Defense Fund groups should have pretty good presentations because their average scores are higher than some of the other groups, where I can guess that the American Civil Liberties Union group might need the most support. So that's it. These are the different ways that I differentiated my groups. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, you can see all these links I will put in the submission page. And if you have any questions, contact me. And that's all. Have a good day.